If you're listening on podcast, be sure to tune in to our YouTube channel for more content. The link is in the description.
Welcome to Wild and Weird Radio, a Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast.
Alchemy. It is the foundation of science and of modern medicine. It is a bridge between mysticism and practical physics, and as some believe, holds the key of creation and transformation. The ancient art of alchemy is mysterious and complex in its teachings and is far, far reaching. Some believe it is a divine gift, while others see a relation to ancient and modern alien contact. Whatever its origin, each day everyone participates in alchemical practices, whether it be cooking a meal or trying to create their own inner peace. It is far more than a transmutation of lead and base metals into gold. Join us for an alchemical primer in this episode of Wild and Weird Radio.
Welcome back to Wild and Weird Radio, everybody. Thanks for joining us again this week. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way, every time a new video is posted, you're going to be alerted immediately. And if you're following us on Instagram, remember, there's that extra hassle of clicking an extra button to make sure that you see our stuff clogging into your feed the way you want it to be, because that's what you want to see all the time, is wild and weird and hell did holler all the time, all day, everywhere. So
if you're not watching us on YouTube, watch us on YouTube, because it's pretty hilarious sometimes, right? I mean, let's be real.
Yeah, it's good times. You get to see our faces and our real-time reactions to stuff. Plus, you also get to see bonus content that you don't hear on the audio, but you can always go and listen on the audio side, hear where we say you're going to want to see this, and you can go straight to that point in the video and look at the images that we provide. So how have you guys been this week?
I've been great. I actually went out and was watching the skies a lot lately. That's been fun. Downloaded a nice little satellite tracking app, and that makes life interesting. If you guys haven't did that yet, do it. It's fun. It's like the newest pastime,
It's been nonstop caterings for me for the last 5 days. So 12-hour days, long days in the kitchen. I gotta say, I kind of missed it.
Yeah, really?
Yeah,
I missed the food. That's what I missed from your catering days.
That's what Kelly was saying too, because she's like, "This has got some good perks. You're bringing home extra food every now and then.
Yeah, well, people who don't know, that's how I met Joe. Basically, he was doing that then, and back at the shop where we worked, he would come in and he would have this food left over, and boy, I'll tell you what, it was party time.
I'd come in there and bring in food, and then I'd pick up some coral and stuff like that and go home.
Yeah. Then the legendary yellow slaw. That's where I first found that. So it was good stuff.
How have you been, Jess?
It's good.
Doing good. I think we've got the whole podcast studio set up, hammered out. We had to do a lot of troubleshooting when it came to setting up our audio video component. So, but I think we've got that hammered out. We've got the lighting scheme put together. We're still kind of experimenting with some of that, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to launch that shortly. And the third LBL video from my trilogy should be coming out pretty soon. So I think our first episode might just be a sort of like a companion to those three videos, and we can kind of do some behind the scenes
Sweet.
discussions and everything about that, and kind of what we went through in LBL, and kind of bring that full circle. So, and then we've got a bunch of new show topics that we're going to be discussing, Joe and I. So it's coming along.
That's
Good
awesome.
deal.
Looks great. The
I can't wait
promo
to hear the
shots
host Mothers episode.
yeah, right. You're probably going to be on it. If you guys aren't following Jess, get over there and follow Hellbound Holler. There's some incredible stuff that these guys are doing. Everyone who's interested in the phenomena of Dogman, the paranormal in general, they need to be watching that. That's straight up. And I'm not just saying that because they're friends. I'm saying because they're really good researchers.
Yeah, they probably are two of the best boots on the ground people that we know, and it's a huge privilege to be able to work with you guys.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're ready to quit messing around with microphones and cameras for a bit. So we're ready to get back in the woods. We've had to completely redo an entire room in our home, and get rid of everything, and then build it out and do sound stuff and run lights and run everything, and we're just like, this is so not fun. We just want to go back to the woods, but we want to kind of take Hellbound Holler to another level, and just add another type of show that we do on there. So we're going to continue to do our field investigations, but we're also going to throw in our podcast. So we're really looking forward to doing that.
Awesome.
Can't wait. Well, you guys ready to get into the news?
Let's go into the news.
Sweet. So it has been a relatively boring news week. We did
no
get
aliens invaded. Yeah. We kind of thought they might, or something, but
we got a few little tidbits for you though. I'll start us off with the big breakthrough. Scientists at a thermonuclear reactor, ITER, replicate the sun's limitless energy on Earth. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, this is awesome. This is great. What can go wrong? Well, you just created the sun's limitless energy in a very small space. What could go wrong? Kaboom. But if it works, then we did just kind of step up a little bit, like climbed a rung on the Kardashev.
Maybe like, another decimal point or two.
Right. We moved a thousandth of a point.
Yeah.
But if we can actually make this work, then we can actually advance technology incredibly fast at this point. If it stays stable.
Truth. And, if we already know this. I mean, we talked to Stanton Friedman. He told us this stuff existed in the 50s. This is just, for whatever reason, we're just now starting to talk about it again.
Because they would get it to work and then shut the project down.
Yeah. Right. That's pretty big news, and that really is something revolutionary for humanity. I guess the next one would be we got radio signals coming from out there again. Actually, there's two separate stories about radio signals coming out from out there, which is weird because we kind of predicted that would be how this went down, as I recall. But
you start knocking on doors.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. But this one's a little different because instead of just being like 1,800 light years away, this was 60 million light years away, Joe. This signal was sent when the dinosaurs were out there.
So maybe the dinosaurs were trying to establish contact.
They could have been. They probably were. It was like that.
Or civilization was just trying to establish contact themselves.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's totally what it was. What you got, Jess?
That other civilization could be just as extinct as the dinosaurs at this point. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or they could be here. Just saying.
They are us. So everything always comes back to they are us, doesn't it?
Yes.
So I got a story from the mirror.co.uk. This is about a U.S. Borders and Customs Patrol agent, Robert Thompson, who has opened up about his experiences working the Mexican-U.S. border and how he and a lot of other agents have witnessed a lot of quote-unquote strange things in the sky. Some things they want to attribute to being souped-up drones, which is usually what people say about things like that now, but a lot of stuff that they could not explain. They have they have hundreds of agents out there who are keeping an eye out for smugglers, and often they see just really strange stuff in the sky. One quote from this article states that they saw a flying object that was doing circles around the police helicopters and then went up to 14,000 feet. Could it be something Raytheon related? Absolutely. Could it be, a Chinese drone doing something, doing some scouting? Absolutely. So it could be a lot of different things, but these are still UAPs because they don't quite know what they are. Even if it is a Chinese drone or something that Raytheon is developing, which is a defense contractor, that it still counts as a UAP because we don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. So it's still unidentified at this point. But it's kind of interesting that you have, Border Patrol agents coming forth and talking about this kind of thing.
Oh yeah, we're seeing a lot of that recently. I mean, it's just a domino effect. We see a lot more when one comes forward, more come forward. It's that whole thing of disclosure starts at home. It's kind of that way. What else we got, Joseph?
That was once taboo is starting to open up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the more interesting ones that I'm looking forward to that we can set a clock on is the fact that Tesla's big R&D meeting and what they're calling AI Day got pushed out to September 30th because they're anticipating having a working Optimus prototype ready by September 30th of this year. Now, if you don't know what the Optimus robot is, it is their AI-driven human cyborg relation.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's very humanoid. I'm curious to see what this is going to be like in real life.
Well, it's okay. This is the one that he assured everyone would not destroy humanity.
Yeah, because it can only run at 3 miles an hour.
Well, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I don't think that I can run for 3 miles an hour for the full length of time of the thing's battery charge. Yeah. I mean, I could run faster than it at first, but
there was also that incident when they were having a lot of storms in Texas, and people were trying to flee the area, and they were driving Teslas, and the Tesla company actually came down and said, "Oh, well, we've changed the software, so now you have greater range." So they have an ability in their software, from the Tesla part, which that the SpaceX and the robotics and everything else, that they have the ability to increase the range. So that they have it built in where they can increase the speed of these things. If they can increase the range on your Tesla just by changing a little bit of coding in the software, what is stopping them from changing a little bit of the coding in the software for these humanoid robot things?
Jess, we know that you're just itching to get out there and save humanity from the uprising of the bots.
I've really been working on my Sarah Connor look, and
I can't wait to see it. So I cannot wait to see it. We got to get some photos, do a photo shoot. It's going to be epic, absolutely epic. Well, we did have some other weird UFO news, and that was local. We had a couple of sightings here at home, and had some people contact us, and I made a little video of that because there was just so many of them. I think it was like 3 or 4, and I actually got to see something out there myself. I still think it was a satellite. One of the reasons I got my little satellite app was to find out, exactly what is flying over, when it's flying over. And I think that's a really valuable thing to do if you're out there watching the skies. I mean, just get you a satellite app. It's not much.
And the thing is, it's really responsible too, as an investigator. You're doing your due diligence to know whether or not something out there is known or unknown.
And I gotta be honest, it's fun. I mean, I could turn it on right now, and it'll tell me exactly how many are flying over in the next X amount of time, and you can go out there and watch. Sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. But we did get some reports, and one of the reports was next door to me. It was right by the airport, and we did have verification of the parts of the report, not the UFO part. Cameras did not catch UFO, radar did not catch UFO, but I find that interesting because we did have animal reactions in this report. We had, strange behaviors, and then a few hours later, we had another report
to the south of us. And I don't know, guys. It was a busy time. And if you saw anything or still see anything, let us know, because it does kind of seem like more sightings are happening at this point.
It does. It seems like it's an uptick, not just here, but globally.
Yeah,
I think now that everybody's seeing the taboo is kind of lifted, they're more comfortable talking about it. Like even at one of the caterings that I was at this weekend, an individual brought that up, and she said apparently the government came out and said that UFOs are real. And I heard that, and I was like, well, let's have a conversation about that. And we started the talk, and she's like, I always thought that I was crazy, but now that because she had seen something years and years and years ago, and it was a daylight time thing, she just thought she had lost her mind and was, just hallucinating or seen something that just shouldn't have been there, but or that she misidentified something. But now that it is, I guess, becoming more okay to have seen these things, she's actually feeling better about her own sanity because of it.
Oh yeah. I mean, of course. I just want to give a really quick thank you to everybody who tuned in for our last episode. That was a lot of fun. We had some people actually asking questions and saying some stuff. We had a really good discussion with a couple of these guys. Really appreciate it. We had someone who told us that aliens are demons. Maybe, I don't know. Could be, maybe, I don't know. Someone reported their sighting.
That means that they were aliens.
That they also means that they were angels.
Angels, yeah.
Yeah, angel. Well, you said the same thing. It's all
basically
labels.
Yeah.
It's all labels, dude. So we've got that. And just come on over and listen to us when we do these things live. We do a little live premiere of the show every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we're in there. We're in there in the chat room. We take time to sit there and watch this, even though we just recorded it, and I have to watch it multiple times because I edit it. You're all welcome. But we do appreciate you guys coming and listening. So hope we see you there. If not, oh well, just listen. I mean, we have really good listener news as well. We've cracked the 25,000 mark at this point on downloads. Phenomenal, guys. Thank you for listening to us, and thank you for putting us where we are. We just want to keep going higher and higher with these numbers, and we're going to add some really cool stuff if we can get these numbers up a little higher, by the way, just to let you know, especially on the YouTube channel. I think that's the news, guys. What do you think?
I think so. Well, everybody, we have a really interesting episode for you all today. We've been setting on this one for quite some time as well. And now's the time, I guess, to go ahead and talk about it, because we're starting to see more and more things that were once thought as mystical and magical become science, right?
True.
We've got warp holes, we've got warp bubbles, we've got micro black holes. All of these things that used to be thought as science fiction now being science fact. And then there's a bunch of other things that are occurring that used to be thought up as mystical or magical, but we're actually seeing are causational and cyclical. So this week's episode we have for you is based on alchemy. And I know that Ron has a interest in alchemy from way back. I've studied alchemy a wee bit. And Jessi, I do believe, has some dabblings in the old alchemist book.
I have dabbled in several types of alchemy from time to time. So
I'm
yes.
sure. But well, and funny enough, like part of being food service workers, like if you go back way back, some of us were considered once upon a time alchemists. Whether you're a bartender, your job was derived from alchemy, and if you're blending spices, your job was originally you were the alchemist. So welcome all you food service workers to the table of alchemy.
Yeah, they had no idea that they were alchemists, or that they probably came from the roots of alchemy, did they?
Right.
But a lot of things did come from the roots of alchemy. Everything from
modern medicine is one of them.
Modern medicine is definitely
pharmaceuticals. And then we have alchemy's got roots and ties in all forms of mysticism and magic arts, it's got roots to the development of mankind.
Yeah.
All these religious texts, including the Book of Enoch, it states that these watchers came down and they taught the ways of alchemy. If you subscribe to ancient astronaut theory, it was that these ancient astronaut people, these beings came down, were perceived as godlike beings, and they taught various cultures.
Gods, angels, messengers from above, guardians of the sky. They have many names, didn't they? But whatever they were, they did seem to appear to these people either physically or in dreams, mostly in dreams. I mean, we can see the same kind of contact with, well, founder of the Mormon religion. It's the same kind of thing, and, I brought that up specifically because we're dealing with kind of the same thing there. We're talking about, ancient books with ancient knowledge. This is the principal foundation of where this stuff came from. So some believe that alchemy is basically it's the grand work, right? That's what it is. It's the science of God, science of creation. It kind of negates the natural order, and it's beyond that. It's something like you said before. Magic is just another word for a science that we don't understand.
Yeah. So Jessi, tell us about some of your interests in alchemy, and then we'll kind of go round table with alchemy. Also tell some history.
So before we get into that, I think we gotta start with, let's get like a basis of alchemy. There's so many different types of alchemy, and the most common thing that you think of is the metallurgy type of alchemy. So what you learned, for the basics of alchemy was the attempt to turn lead into gold. And that was huge in the Middle Ages. That was when that sort of alchemy was like spiking into existence. There's a lot of people who were executed who claimed to be alchemists who could not turn lead into gold. They attempted to find the sacred formula to turn lead into gold, and a lot of them were put to the rack for their troubles. So there's a lot of different types of alchemy. There's 6 types of alchemy, to be precise. And any of these things you can apply to your own life and how you use alchemy in everyday instances. So the first type of alchemy we have is the spiritual type of alchemy. And it's the most popular reason to study is to connect to a spiritual reality or other spiritual realities. And the gold that is sought in this pursuit is that of spiritual wholeness. And that gold is just as pure and valuable as the substance of metal gold. So the spiritual alchemy is the seeking of the higher self in that. And then you have the psychological alchemy, which weren't the early alchemists the first ones to treat psychological problems as a chemical imbalance?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you have the artistic, which is the changing, mixing, and transformation of materials into some sort of artistic creation. You have the social, which is political and social movements that seek to transform the society around them from their current reality to a new reality. And then you have the practical, which is the production of tinctures, tonics, oils, compounds, and elixirs. And the turning lead to gold falls into this category. A lot of times this is referred to as scientific work or laboratory work. And then the last but not least is the therapeutic alchemy. And that's what you would refer to as like a physical or mental act that focuses on healing. Chinese folk medicine falls into this category, Ayurveda, yoga, herbalism, Tai Chi, anything like that, aromatherapy. But that kind of helps you give like a basis of what is alchemy. And it is basically the art of transformation. And you can divide it into these categories. So I think everybody, pretty much everybody can say, oh, I have done this, I have done that. Yeah. I do a therapeutic, I do aromatherapy every day. You're committing acts of alchemy all day and you don't even realize it.
It was one of the most broadly, and still is one of the most broadly practiced practices ever. It like you were saying with metallurgy, it's what brought us out of the Stone Age into the Bronze Age, and bronze into the iron, and it as their alchemy advanced, as their metallurgy advanced, as their medicines advanced, they the society advanced. I mean, there's stuff like, for example, me today. I was outside doing yard work most of the day, and I stuck a wad of nettle leaves in my mouth and chewed on some sweetgrass and nettle. Really, really strong in vitamin C. It's sweet, and it's also a natural pain reliever. So as I'm sitting there doing my work, because it's a pain reliever, because it is it's high in antioxidants, and it helps reduce inflammation. So as you're working and doing the labor out in the field, your joints and stuff don't tend to swell as much, as long as you're, ingesting some of this stuff. So, I picked it right there out of the garden, and I knew what its medicinal purposes were and how I could use it. So I did. And, that's stuff I've done since I was a kid. It was stuff that my grandmother taught me. And we have these it's almost like alchemy was the unspoken thing that connects every society around the entire planet, and every civilization around the planet in one form or another, from the First Nations tribes here in America all the way over to the ancient Chinese, Middle Eastern, Indian, that entire area all around the world.
Well, alchemy draws on common like symbols and images and patterns. And when Carl Jung was studying, was coming about, talking about alchemy, the psychological alchemy, he would study people's dreams, and this was all connecting themes that went back through the ages, that were coming up in people's dreams, even if they had no prior knowledge of what they're dreaming about. They still experience these symbols and these patterns in their dreams. And it's a part of a collective unconsciousness that goes through the ages and goes through time, space, everything when it comes to human collective unconsciousness.
100% right. Especially with the Jung thing. A lot of people had no idea, but he got the idea from the dream part because he had those dreams. He actually had the dreams.
He was the one that recognized the patterns because of his own experience.
Yeah, he had a reoccurring dream of an ancient library full of books with strange symbols, and one day he was given a book in 1928 by of Chinese alchemy, and he began to create a library after that. And he says at one point, a few years later, while he was studying all this, that he realized that was the library that he had seen in his dream, and it all kind of came to him in this flash. And yeah, it's just what you just said. He started kind of seeing that there was this collective unconscious and these symbols. And guys, we see that today. We see that today with so many people who have had these contact type experiences. We see it everywhere, and it's something that's just been a part of us as a collective, as humanity, right? But I think it's just amazing because some of the stories that surround alchemy and the legends of the transmutation, because this is what most people think. They think about the Philosopher's Stone. When you say alchemy, they think the Philosopher's Stone immediately. Or they think Full Metal Alchemist. It's one of the two if you're an anime fan. But I will say this. If you watch Full Metal Alchemist, they did their research.
Yeah.
They really did their research, because a lot of the terms and terminology that you hear in that, there's a fact. Those are based in fact. The actual symbol that of the anime that they use with the cross, with the serpent, that's the flamel. That was a symbol of the knowledge being crucified on the cross. That's what that means. It's a kind of like a forbidden knowledge, because it was, and one alchemist back in his day basically made the statement that this was such a power that it just couldn't be allowed to run rampant. It kind of reminds you of some of the Greenpeace guys in the 70s, who were out there protesting the development of the nukes and such, right? It was like, well, they can't have this. They're going to destroy the world. But John Frederick Schweitzer, Helveticus, from in the 1600s, 1700s, he was trying to actually demystify alchemy. He was trying to focus people away from this mystical, magical stuff and focus more on science, the new budding of science, right? And so one day he gets this visit by a man, and the guy starts talking to him. Well, the guy is basically he's dressed as a Mennonite pastor, and he asked him about what he feels about alchemy, and he tells him, well, I've heard stories, not much into it. Kind of like something that we would say, right? With a lot of the stuff. Well, this guy pulls out this little ivory box, opens it up, and inside of it there are 3 little crystals about the size of a walnut, and they're kind of yellowy. And he hands one over to Helveticus, and he looks at it and he examines them, and he says he's amazed at these things because they're so light. The weight of them is completely different, and they're kind of glowing. It's something you don't really see a lot of, glowing stones. Just throwing that out there. That would be a thing for me. So the guy says, the stones can heal, give the user amazing abilities, and extend life, as well as transmute base metals to gold. He told him, you are holding enough of that tincture to produce 20 tons of gold. Okay. Helveticus begged for a piece, as you would or I would, but the man refused. And he said, I will return in 3 weeks' time to demonstrate how this works, how to make this work. So Helveticus, though, was sneaky, kind of also like you or me. He managed to scrape off a few grains of the material, and he began experimenting with those in the meantime. And he melted some lead down. He was familiar with alchemy and the basis of it. So he melted some lead down, and he sprinkled some of this powder onto it. And when he did it, he said it bubbled, and all of a sudden it cooled and turned into a glassy stone material, not gold. So when the man returns back, Helveticus asked him to demonstrate the process. And the man says, instead, I'll give you a piece of this and you can do it yourself. To which Helveticus confessed that he had already did this. And the man laughs at him. Rather than getting mad at him, he laughs at him and said, perhaps if you would have applied yourself more to alchemy and thievery, you would have succeeded, right? So he tells him what he did wrong and leaves. And Helveticus and his wife began experimenting with this stone. And as he says, according to his words, after applying the stone to the melted lead in the way that he was shown, the mixture hissed and glowed in an iridescence, then turned brilliant green, then blood red as it cooled. Within 15 minutes, Helveticus had an ingot of, quote, the best and finest gold. So he claims he did it.
Yeah.
He's not the only one.
Nope, because it goes all the way into India. A lot of the folks in India believed that there was this elixir that you could apply to base metals that would then have the same reaction. And there was a Persian chemist. I'm going to butcher this one. He was also a physician, but his name was Abu Rehan Biruni. I think that's actually
you did that pretty good. That's not bad.
Yeah, spend some time with people from that area, and you pick up some of it, but I was scared I was going to butcher it. So he visited Gujarat as part of a court of Muhammad Ghazini, and reported that they experienced that there was similar science to alchemy, which was quite particular to this area. In Sanskrit, it's called Rashiana. I butchered that one. The Y's mess me up. Anyway, and in Persian, I'm not even going to try it. But it means the art of obtaining and manipulating rasha, which is nectar, mercury, juice. It's got multiple meanings applied to this word. But all of these things go back to basically how you can manipulate metals, drugs, compounds, medicines, and many of which of these things, mercury was the core element. Now, we know now what mercury can do to people. So part of you has to ask a little bit, was some of these things that they were thinking induced by mercury? Or were they doing it properly and safely? And they were actually creating these gold materials from base metals, or even the elixir of life that was rumored to bring health to those who are ill beyond any kind of hope of recovery and give back the youth to fading old age. You know, you got to ask yourself, like, how much of this stuff was actually working, and how much of it was snake oil, and how much of it might have been something along the lines of absinthe, because that's another alchemy trick.
It was, yeah.
Ron, you mentioned before about scientists separating themselves from religion or spiritualism in every kind of way. I think that kind of led to a slowing down of progress. I know that we've gone, leaps and bounds in terms of progress, in terms of science. But I think that when you separate the spiritual element of science of alchemy, well, the spiritual alchemy of spiritualism and the science part, if you separate them, and then profit becomes the motive, then you lose part of the equation and something is lost, and physical transformation never occurs because you are now just motivated by profits. And I think that was a big thing with the Middle Ages, is that you had leaders and rulers who had these alchemists in their employ,
courts,
and they were forcing them to try to just turn lead into gold. And they abandoned all other spiritual pursuits in the pursuit of riches, and it was a failure every time. And could it possibly be that the abandonment of other forms of alchemy and just the pursuit of personal profit affected the results of these experiments?
That's highly possible, don't you think? I mean, you have to, like you said, for whatever reason, science wanted nothing to do with spirituality. Okay, so
it still doesn't.
I mean,
well, I mean, you got to look at this too. Religion oftentimes wants nothing.
Doesn't want anything to do with science.
They also don't want anything to do with spirituality. There's a lot of religions that reject their own spirituality.
And I think this compartmentalization of everything has left everybody weaker as a result.
That's what you're saying right there is it. The compartmentalization that we have labeled all these things, these separate things, yet it's all the same. I mean, we've talked about this multiple times with other things. And we fight over this. This is the nonsense of it. But the whole alchemy thing, it's amazing simply because it wasn't just a couple of kooks in a basement, as some people believe. Some people, like you said, there were kingdoms. There were set up, and these governments were actually hiring people to come in and do it. And if they found out you could do it, you're going to do it, or we're going to torture you.
Right.
And it wasn't something that people wanted to come out and say that they could do for those reasons. I think there was a lot of secret schools, thoughts like that. This was it was a art, and it was a craft. And somehow, instead of it being looked at for what it was, it got transferred into something almost, what is it? Heretical, right? I mean, isn't that kind of what it became?
Generally now, like when you mention the word alchemy, you're also, the word almost has commonality with occult.
That's what I'm getting at.
It's like they're braided and tied together. Now, mind you, the practitioners of the occult, going back as late as the 19th century, they were the ones that took a hold of these forbidden knowledge and continued practicing it.
They turned it into what it is, right? I mean, that's the whole thing.
It gave the common, I guess you would call it, mystios of the way we view alchemy today, rather than looking at it as like a chemistry or something that can actually be good and beneficial to the well-being. Everybody associates it with a cult, therefore they associate it with something bad.
Which is hilarious, because if you look at these old writings, these old papers, these guys, like Jess said, there was a spiritual context to alchemy. They didn't say, I am creating it. They said that this is God, and, this is through him that we are doing this. This is through that power that we're doing this, I mean, look at some of the stuff that Flamel did. I mean, it was the same way with him. You know, he always gave credit, back to God, that it was basically he was using a knowledge, and it was not his. He knew it wasn't his. But today, you see, science doesn't do that. Science claims everything is theirs. So
Yeah.
much to the fact that they actually spend, millions of dollars and billions of dollars on patents for things that they will never be able to actually even own,
Or make.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get
Yeah.
at. They own it, but they can't make it. So, that's the difference. And I think you're right. I think it did push us backwards a lot. I'm going to throw the alien thing back in there again, because I like
Yeah.
the old contact stories where, these people would come back and they tell us these stories where they had met with the Venusians, or, these peaceful Pleiadians or whatever, either way. The thing that's really nice about these, and I think why people really buy into it so much, and it's really a pleasant thing to buy into, I'll be honest with you. It'd be nice to think that people can exist with their spirituality and their technology all in one. And that's kind of what these alchemists were doing. They were kind of doing that. They had a science that married into a spiritual belief. And a lot of, like I said, those early contactees were reporting the same thing. A lot of metaphysical teachings are based on that today. That's the most amazing thing of it, because, like you said, it all gets labeled as some kind of evil thing. It's dark. It's, it's satanic. They don't even know what those words mean. The thing is, it's not. It's knowledge, and knowledge is just knowledge, for good or bad.
Yeah. There was probably my favorite. This ties alchemy back into spirituality, as well as changing the whole or the acceptance of a person. Goes back to ayahuasca and the use and how to use it. The ancient Mayan, Incan people were given the way to make ayahuasca, and they made it, and they experienced these deep spiritual encounters where they would be like in another dimension or in another realm. For them, it felt like sometimes thousands of years, but it was only an hour, 2 hours here on Earth. But they would come back with these experiences. They would come back with this knowledge from their creator. And it's one of those that I think, to me, is probably one of the more my favorite, looking into the school of alchemy, because it's so simple, but it's the root base. It is literally a root, and mashing it into a tea, and
Right.
you make a tincture and drink it, and it's that to me is far more powerful, just because of the experiences that people have, than with anything that somebody could have done with turning lead into gold.
Well, that would be your spiritual alchemy, right? I mean, that's kind of what you just said there. I think that's where it would fall into.
Right. Yeah.
And you can relate that to a more, not practical alchemy, but with the creation of spirits, and in terms of like alcohol, so that would be more of like a therapeutic alchemy. But you can relate that.
The Irish do call whiskey the elixir of life.
Yeah, well, it's also the elixir of their demise. So, but you can relate the process of creating an alcohol, a whiskey, or something like that, to someone's spiritual journey. You have, and this also relates to the stages of alchemy, or the 4 major stages of alchemy, where there is a chaos and a destruction. There is a death and a rotting, a putrefaction.
Yep.
There's a fermentation, and then there is a distillation, where there's a purifying of the fermented product. And then at the end, you have a transformed substance that goes from one thing. It could be, for whiskey, it would be corn that you destroy, you let it sit, you let it rot, you let it ferment, and then you distill it to something clean and clear. and then you put it in an oak barrel, and then it ages, and then it becomes something completely different, where you've turned corn into a drinkable substance that has completely different properties. And I think that the destruction of the human psyche and ego after going through a spiritual process where they experience something that is life changing, that is a chemical in nature, that changes their psychology completely, whether it be a traumatic event or they've decided to put themselves through it, like with ayahuasca, that it takes down and it breaks down your ego and who you are and what you think. And then you have to sit with that. And then there is some sort of coming through it where you are distilling out the knowledge that you've received. And then at the end of it, you come at the end of the tunnel and you are a completely different person than when you went into this process. And I think that you can relate this process, and it's a 4-step process within alchemy. And it's similar and the same thing through every alchemical process, that you can see that everything kind of has a very similar route that it takes. And I think that goes back to this universal sameness. We are not a piece of corn, but we can be a piece of corn that turns into a bottle of whiskey. So it's the same thing. It's just everything goes through these processes.
Yeah,
And
it's the purification. I mean, that's kind of what the whole thing was, right? It's to purify, to make it better.
And that goes for physical alchemy, spiritual alchemy, metallurgy, pharmaceuticals, rudimentary natural pharmaceuticals, things like that. It's all the same. It's the same principles, just like Jessi had set and wound down. It's also the same principles for every religion. If for the listeners, if any of you guys listened to what Jessi was saying and you were like, oh, this feels like Sunday morning, well, there's probably a reason. Because spiritual alchemy is part of your religion to a degree, and this mixing of the supernatural and your world has always been a part of life. It's just how open and accepting we are to acknowledging it.
Yeah, people like to kind of shy away from things that they don't understand. And with alchemy, again, I can almost understand it. If we take some of the early stories and early possibilities of where this knowledge originated, we have to really look at that. And we can look at that in religious context. I didn't say spiritual, I said religious. Because we do have tales in religion that, angels came down and they gave people knowledge that they shouldn't necessarily have. We've heard this over and over again. Could it be that that's some of the knowledge? Is that where some of this came from? Is it bad or is it good or is it neither? Is it just knowledge, or are we still talking about aliens? I don't know, but it's interesting to think about because, one of my favorite alchemists was Nicholas Flamel. He was the first I ever actually read about in I think it was one of my Time Life books years ago, and that's where I first learned about alchemy. I was just like, this is amazing, and of course, don't look at that, that's evil. Okay, but we didn't know any better. I mean, this is when UFO books were still under the occult section and the libraries,
and all the UFO books had the same font.
They really did. But Flamel, for those who don't know, was 14th century alchemist, and he began his quest after he had a dream. I want you to pay attention to this, okay? Listen to how this started. This is where he got the idea to go into looking for this philosopher's stone. He had a dream in which an angel appeared before him holding a book, and the angel commanded Flamel to look upon it. And he said, quote, "Behold this book of which thou understandest nothing. To many others, but thyself, it would remain forever unintelligible. But one day thou shalt discern in its pages what none but thyself will see." Now, it's funny, he describes the book perfectly that he sees in this dream, and it's a book that's bound in copper, and it has leaves, and the leaves are not made of paper, but they're made of bark, like a fine bark. And he says, on this book, and this is where I always just blows my mind. On the book, he said it in quotes. It said, Abram the Jew, prince, priest, astrologer, and philosopher. So there's the belief that this book came from Abraham, the one.
Yeah.
So could it be that he did get some of that ancient knowledge and he was holding on to it? You see, that's the thing, right? But what's really amazing about that is that in 1357, Flamel goes into a store, into a bookstore, and he finds that very book in real life. And of course, he buys it immediately. And he begins to try to understand it, but he can't quite understand it because one of the main things, it's written in Latin, and one of the main things is you should have a understanding of the Kabbalah, the Jewish mysticism, as well as alchemy. He did eventually find someone to help him translate it. And according to the legend, he and his wife did create the elixir. Uh, and as proof of this, supposedly in 1382, he achieved his first transmutation of silver and then 3 months later of gold. Now, what's amazing about Flamel, anyone who really looks into his story, this guy literally comes out of nowhere, comes out of poverty, just a normal person. All of a sudden, he has gold. He has lots of money. But what does he do? He doesn't hoard it, he gives it away. He starts giving it back to the church, giving it to the village, giving it to the people. He helped more people with this gold that came from nowhere. And that's a document. He's actually looked at upon as a hero there.
Yeah.
What's amazing about his story is officially he died in 1418. But sightings of Flamel continued until 1761, when he and his wife were seen allegedly at the Paris Opera. Now, there are multiple sightings throughout history of this guy. And one of the things that is amazing about this is someone had said there was a talk about Flamel at one point because another great skeptic was trying to say, "Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with alchemy. It's rubbish. It's no good. Look at the great Flamel. He died in 14, whatever." And this guy says, "No, no, no. I just saw Flamel. Flamel and his wife were in," and he tells him exactly where they were. This was 300 years later. Flamel would have been 300 years at this time. So he also said that true that the Philosopher's Stone does extend life. It does do away with illnesses and disease, but it does not grant absolute immortality because nothing is absolutely immortal according to him. He says that it would extend his life for over 1,000 years, though. And again, I find this interesting because this goes back to some of the first accounts of people, according to the Bible, doesn't it? That they lived for these extraordinarily long years.
Yep.
I'm just saying, this all kind of starts to make perfect sense if you really start looking at it. Was this the knowledge that we were never supposed to have? If so, then all of science is knowledge we were never supposed to have. That's what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah.
So,
or science is in a pursuit of knowledge that they can't acquire because they have lost the other keys to the equation or refuse to take those keys.
Refuse to acknowledge them.
They refuse to acknowledge the other pieces to the puzzle. So they're in pursuit of this, but they will not attain it because they refuse the other pieces of the puzzle that are required, the other pieces of this equation that are required to achieve these goals.
You're 100% right, Jessi. And I do believe, honestly, I'm going there again, but I do believe that this is the primary belief of and the mission that some of these contactees have been saying for years, that this is what it's about. They just didn't call it alchemy, but it's a transformation of humanity into something on a more spiritual level, something more than what we are, as Yoda would say, not this crude matter, right? So, But you see what I'm saying, though. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me anyway.
Yeah, the one of the things that I always told people, because as a former minister, a lot, I talked to a whole lot of people who even rejected, like I said earlier, they rejected their own spirituality. And they also would reject a whole lot of modern science, and they rejected old science, even not just modern, but just science in general. You'd see that from certain people. But I would have a conversation with them. I'd basically tell them that you will find, it's always been my thought that you will find God where your spirituality, your religion, science, and mathematics all come together. That you'll experience something that you've never thought possible when you allow these things to come together. Ron's part of the Illuminati now.
No,
And
there's a reason for that
there is
sacredness in the triangle.
It's the triune
Mhm.
symbol, yeah. And it represents the three being one. And that's not just, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, but it's the spiritual, the physical, and the soul, all of it coming together into one thing. And we reject so much of this stuff, and it's mind-boggling what we do accept, but we reject the rest of it. We look at some of these things like, for example, since we've talked about it, well, spirits, like whiskeys and things and liquors and whatnot. We look at those things and like, yeah, okay, we can do with that. But then we start looking at things of the spiritual side. And we're like, it's hogwash. But they're all the same thing. They all came from the same place. They're all the same root. So if one is acceptable, then why isn't the other? And it goes back, I think, into what people's personal philosophies are and what they've been taught should be their personal philosophy.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, I think we're spot on with that. It goes back to the belief systems again, doesn't it? I mean, that's
really
pretty much what you just said. It's all going back to belief systems.
So,
But,
Ron, I think you mentioned where your interest with alchemy picked up was reading some of the Time Life books and getting into that. Jessi, where did your interest with alchemy really start to develop and pick up?
Well,
she created a homunculus in the basement.
I didn't realize I was into alchemy until I started looking into alchemy and was like, oh, that applies to so many things in my life.
Yeah.
I think I'd read things here and there, so Manly P. Hall stuff. I think even some Joseph Campbell stuff, and they hit on these common things that go through time over and over and over again, the hero's journey and everything like this all relates to alchemy. It all relates to everything. And I think when you start looking into human history, you start to see that it's all just the same, and it all just keeps repeating over and over again. And when you finally realize, oh, that's what alchemy is, because forever, just like any kid who went to public school, what is alchemy? It's turning other metals into gold. That's all you know. That's all you know. And then you start, when you finally have these concepts introduced to you, you're like, oh, it's not that at all. And that is just such a minuscule part of what alchemy is, that alchemy is happening every day, all around you, all the time, constantly. You are committing acts of alchemy constantly, that it gets a lot more interesting, and it almost brings a little more magic into your life. That like every act that you go through is an act of some transformative magic. If you get up in the morning and you eat a good meal, and then you go to the gym and you work out, you break down your muscles, you get stronger, you come home, you have a protein shake, you drink water, you do that every day for months and months and months, you're transforming from one thing to another physically. So you're creating alchemy just by getting up and going to the gym every day. You're making magic that way. You're fashioning a work of art out of clay. And it all relates. Everything comes together in that way. And I think it's pretty amazing to finally realize that when you look into alchemy. I do suggest everybody, just read The Idiot's Guide to Alchemy, to get started with. It's so concise and like so helpful when it comes to it. And I know people make fun of those books, but read that to get started on looking into alchemy.
And great.
You'll realize like how much your life is just full of it. It's full of alchemy. And of course, look into Manly P. Hall and, philosophy and everything around it too. And you just realize that every day is just full of alchemy. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
We have
Yeah.
to remember that our alchemy, Joe, though, guys, the old alchemy that we base everything on now, it was all symbolic. There's a lot of this stuff was hidden right in plain sight with just symbolism and pictures, and only a select few could actually understand that then. So what we've done over the years is we've taken that, which is beautiful. We've taken that away and brought it to where it's just commonplace. I mean, like you said, people don't even know they're doing it. That's amazing. So
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things was growing up. I didn't know what alchemy was. I mean, we touched on it with metallurgy and whatnot, and that's, I think, really where my experience more evolved into trying to understand what it was, because that was my job in the Air Force, was metal fabrication and making alloys and different things of that nature. So I learned more about that, but also growing up as an Appalachian, learning the mountain alchemy, I guess you would call it.
mountain magic.
Mountain magic, the mountain witches, and learning all
Mhm.
that stuff about how to use nettle, how to use waterweed, how to use all these different roots, and how to make tinctures, and how to take chewing tobacco and put it on a bee sting, and how to treat burns naturally with all these different things, and blending herbs and weeds and roots with a mortar and pestle and applying it with a paper towel. and,
Yeah.
um, then growing in and going to the master naturalist school and becoming a master naturalist and taking all those courses, because what's funny is the head of the state for the master naturalist program, she has her doctorate in pharmacy, but she has a book on medicinal herbs and practices with alchemy on how to blend all these natural pharmaceuticals from your backyard. And it's a fantastic book too. Might even include it in a link of the description. Her name's Becky Linger, and it's just a great book. $30, I think, is all it is, and it's like a tome. But there's so much stuff in it that you can learn how to actually take from your backyard, and weeds that you would consider just something to get rid of in your backyard, that you can actually do something practical with, that is good for you, good for your body, good for fixing different ailments. That for me, I think, has been my biggest attraction with alchemy, is the more natural nature and spiritual side of it all. Because I was, at one point in my career, I was very focused on the metal side of it and how to make things hard, strong. So that way they didn't break under pressure. But yeah. That's, for me, that's, I guess, what pulled me into being interested in alchemy.
That's pretty cool. I'm still working on the Philosopher's Stone, but maybe one day could happen.
That's right. So I think this has been a pretty fun little episode, guys.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Alchemy's a huge. It's a
monster.
It's a monster. It's a deep. Yeah. It's a very deep esoteric subject.
We didn't even touch the Emerald Tablet. We didn't touch any of that
there's
stuff.
so much. We've just barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, and it's such a deep and wide-ranging topic that I don't know how many hours it would take to go through it, and you still wouldn't scratch the surface, because this is something that goes back to Alexandria, yes. It goes way back, and it has gone through so many iterations, and so many people have just thought about it, written about it, discussed it, and it's developed in so many different directions in so many different ways, and it can be applied to literally everything in the universe, that I don't think there is a concise or whole way to do a conversation about alchemy. But I think a nice little, just a nice little intro, a little just peppering of alchemy has been pretty good, though.
Yeah, it was a nice briefing.
We can dedicate future episodes to more particular, more specific things, like mystical tablets, for example.
Everybody has one.
There's plenty of those. We can talk about those. We can go into other topics. I mean, alchemy is a treasure trove conversation points.
Burning
and
of the
education.
library at Alexandria, for example. Can
you imagine how much was lost?
Yes.
Like, it hurts me to think.
Yes.
How much was lost for that?
Because, it is believed that some of the first works of alchemy were in that library when it was destroyed. And it was destroyed. And shortly after that, I believe alchemy was outlawed in certain places as well.
Yep.
For those reasons. Again, we are talking about something that had the collective potential to change the world. Maybe that's why we had it in the first place. We just screwed it up and used it for the wrong thing, and look where we are now.
Robots.
Well, yeah. Yep, robots. That's exactly right, Jess. So
maybe they'll get it right,
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah,
I keep thinking they might get it right one day.
I don't know. I'm still scared to plug them up to the internet. Give them 5 minutes alone on the internet, we round up with Ultron.
You're just gonna have like racist robots who know how to cook really good stuff.
Yeah.
It's so wrong, isn't it? I mean, I know we just took a tangent right there, but just really quick, because this will probably be our next topic. Robot rights. I mean, it's going to be a thing. That's going to be a thing, guys.
It will be. And we even talked about this on our AI episode. And now we're looking like, honest to God, on that AI episode, I thought we were going to be like, we were 5-6 years out from having to worry about that. But now it's like September 30th is coming this year.
Yeah.
Well,
it's been fun.
Jessi, take us home.
Can it be over? I'm so tired. I just want a break. Let's have can the robots just come and just let's do this. Let's get this shindig on the road, please. All right. No, we can't. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us for this fun, interesting, weird, kind of wild, kind of confusing little journey into alchemy. Like I said, you're never gonna cover it all, but kind of let us know what kind of things you do in your everyday life that you kind of realize are little bits of alchemy. You can comment in the video below and let us know kind of the moments of alchemy that you experience in your everyday life. Make sure you follow us on all the socials. Lanham Ron, we got Skinwalker Sculpts, and we got Helmet Jessi. And check out Wild and Weird WV for all of the upcoming events, including the what are you guys doing? The Whiteville UFO?
Oh yeah, Whiteville UFO Festival. We're actually gonna be tomorrow for those.
Is it Whiteville or Whiteville?
Whiteville.
Whiteville. Okay.
Yep. Whiteville, Virginia.
So Whiteville UFO, if you are in the area, make sure you go check that out. This is premiering on a Friday, so that means it's tomorrow. So go to bed after you watch this, get up and go to the festival, please. It's free. There will be vendors, there will be food, there will be crafts, there'll be speakers, including our friends Ron and Joe. They'll be there speaking, so please go give them a shout, tell them hello, and listen to Ron in person ramble about UFOs, which is terrifying. So
it truly is.
Make sure you follow us and make sure you like, share, and subscribe to all of our content. We really appreciate you guys listening and watching every week, and we love the comments. We love everything. We love the questions. So please just throw them at us. We love it. As always, we appreciate you. Like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. That way you never miss an episode of Wild and Weird Radio. Joe, go ahead and threaten some people.
Yeah.
We actually have the secret of turning lead into gold. The key is to stay wild and weird, everybody.